We are recording.
Hmm.
All right, this training session is for our weekly meeting agendas with the client. As we know, PMs schedule weekly meetings for the projects that they're running to update the client on what's going on the project, next steps, things like that. So here's going to be a refresher course on that agenda, and I did some slight edits that you'll notice. I'm going to share my screen here. Let me take a look at it. Can you see the sheet okay?
Yes.
Very straightforward. Everybody's familiar with the sheet. The one pager, but we try to get everything that we think is important to cover at that meeting on the same page. So starting at the top, prior to going to the meeting, you want to go in there and type the date, project name, project manager, and then I added an additional column for objective. The objective is alignment. Like, we want to make sure that we're on the same page with the client. So as an example, I put in their alignment. Just fill that in as well. Okay.
If it's the same every week, just to do alignment.
Yes.
But it might be more like we're strategizing on the Segal project. Next week will probably be one that's called front portico.
Mm-hmm.
That's the objective.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. The next section of the sheet says schedule milestones. We're keeping this because we like it. It says what's happened in the past, what's happening in the upcoming weeks. You should be able to fill this up prior to meeting with the client. There are some things that you might have to pencil in later, but the way that I used to do it, I used to like to type my sheet in ahead of time and then just have that ready in front of me and add to if needed. So this comes from you visiting the job sites, your constant communication with the lead carpenter if there is one on site. You'll obviously be in the know on the things that were completed in the past week, like since the previous meeting. And then you'll be in the know on the next steps that are going to be happening. So starting today, here's what we're going to be doing. Those will all go in this column. Straightforward.
I recommend keeping a folder of these, or a handful of these in a folder in your car and leave them in there.
Mhm.
In case you forget, don't have it, whatever, weren't able to get to the office.
Yeah, you definitely want spares, blank spares in your car if you're ever not able to get in here and pre-type and print it ahead of time.
Or you can just handwrite, the stuff.
No,
I do that, I will always handwrite.
That's fine too.
whatever makes sense for you.
So the next column, this column used to just be items to address. We have now added a second part that says pending AWOs. So in the items to address, it could be any hot items that you need to go over with the client. That goes in here. And then what we tend to see happening is that whenever draws were due, sometimes we would forget the AWOs, or if there were AWOs that we needed to clarify or get information from the client to another department, like maybe design is waiting on client to make a selection, something like that.
So
So
maybe we want to say AWOs slash
selections,
client decisions.
client decisions.
So that just like, what do you want to do? I need you to decide.
Mhm. So we are the main person of contact for the client. So everything's flowing through us as the PM on that project. So if design is waiting on something, when you're going to that meeting, you want to have those questions with you ready to present to the client. Say, hey, we need you to make a decision on this faucet so that we can get it done, or what you want to do in this room and whatever it is. So that'll all go in here to be discussed at that meeting. Okay.
What's also nice is a lot of times you want to give the clients like a week to decide something, right?
Mhm.
For certain things. So on the one weekly meeting, it would then say, like, I need you to choose what you want this threshold to look like. And we'll talk about it at the next weekly meeting. So then the next week, if you do it digitally, that's fine. If you handwrite it, that's fine. Then you just transpose it over.
Mhm.
And it would automatically be there. And the client should be good to go to give you that decision.
Absolutely agree. Next section is payments due. Obviously, you want to check that to know what draw is coming up and you want to put it here. This works for two reasons. One, to make sure that we're not forgetting to pick up our draws on time, and then also to give the clients a heads up. So give them some advance notice, like, hey, the next draw is going to be started drywall that's starting in 2 weeks. So I'll pick it up at our next weekly meeting or something like that. Just giving them a heads up so they can have that prepared for you.
I believe this section should never be empty. So even if you're collecting like start of drywall, okay, I'm starting drywall now. Well, our next check is at start of trim. You should expect that in whatever the next draw is, even if the draw is like 4 weeks from now.
Mhm.
It's on there and you just say like your next draw is in 3 weeks, your next draw is in 2 weeks. So your next draw is next week.
Yeah.
And that's where we would need to look to see the additional work order. So Selena, can you explain the process of where to go to find the current balance?
Yes. So let me get into co-construct if I can. Now, typically what the PDs do when they post an AWO for a project is they go into the next draw and they add it on there as upcoming. So what you would do, and I don't know if I can find one that's recently been posted, but what you would do is you would have to go into your co-construct schedule.
You can
Look
find in Vicento,
Vicento, okay.
the one for the kitchen subfloor replacement, $1,360.
Okay, has it been updated in the schedule?
Yeah. Oh, no, not in the schedule, in the change order folder.
Okay,
This
So-
is Selena's about to explain what we want to see to make it nice and easy for you.
right. So here's what would happen. So this is Vicento. We're gonna go into the construction schedule. All right. These are nice and checked off for the most part. Your next draw that's coming up is
Part of flooring.
start of flooring, which is supposed to be coming up in a few days on the 8th, right? At start of flooring, your AWO that was just approved will be due with that draw. So what the PDs will do is once they've approved that AWO, the client has approved it, the PD has approved it, the PD comes into your schedule and adds it in here into that. So plus, what's the amount, Oz?
$1,360.
What was it? AWO number 2?
10.
1360.
1360 equals
Come on, say
2136.
you got this.
I got it. And so this is where the PD will put it in for you and save it, so that when you're going through your schedule, you'll have that amount there. You want to fill it out on your sheet and make sure that you collect it when it's due. So save.
So
That's now in there.
the PDs have been trained on this, and then all AWOs get assigned to the PDs to approve, right? So they're aware when something gets approved, and then their follow-up is then to go put it on the schedule, and then also do all the backup and the coding, and then turn that over to Beth for all that. So that's part of their like AWO wrap-up.
Correct. So this is part of their AWO process. They know what to do when the client's approved. They go approve it. They know to code it and send it off to Beth, and then also put the coding in the options to contract. This is going to be part of their process. They're going to take that amount, put it in your schedule so that you have it there. So you just want to look at it prior to going to your meeting to make sure it's accurate. Now, there's always human error. We want them to do it right 100% of the time, but I would say just peek in the change orders to make sure nothing was missed.
Or just be aware. But for the
Yeah.
most part, the objective was to try to put it for one spot so you didn't have to go sifting around, nice and easy. And worst case scenario, if you didn't have that ahead of time, you could go on your phone onto the schedule and still look it up and you could have it right there.
Correct.
I've done that plenty of times, and it's very nice to have that information right there.
Mhm. All right, awesome. So that payment will go here. Usually I put a tentative date next to it, whatever date I'm projecting. And I give the clients a heads up that this is potentially the date. It could be sooner, it could be later, depending on how the schedule changes, but that way they have a time frame in mind. All right, and then the next section talks about your experience. It's pretty straightforward. We did tweak this a little bit. What it used to say on this first bullet point was, do you have any, it would say, how likely were you to refer us on a scale of 1 to 5, and then it would ask for the name and phone number of the referral. We thought that it was a little bit much to ask for that every week.
That's very good.
So we just edited that to say on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to refer us to friend, family, coworker, etc. And then if they had any notes they wanted to put in there, they could. So that's just a rating. And then on the next line item, it says, if the rating is less than 5, what would we need to do to raise your rating to a 5? So this is a conversation piece here, and one that we would need to feel comfortable having with the client. I know sometimes it's like really uncomfortable to have negative feedback to our face, but it's important because some of the things that we're putting in place is I'm going to be reviewing these weekly, and if a PM is getting like 3 or less 2 weeks in a row, then there's a chance that somebody else is going to attend the next weekly meeting to see if we can resolve what the main issue is with the client, or just to help get back on track with that project, because we don't want it to run away for too long. Right?
Sometimes it's just the client,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Look at Oz, we just did a training and he graded us a 5 out of 10. It's interesting because what was the next question? Well, what do we need to do to make that higher?
Correct.
I think the concept still remains the same.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what your honest opinion is. That's totally fine. So what do we need to do to improve?
Absolutely. Yep.
Some clients are a little bashful about saying what they need.
Mhm.
Other clients are just like, just hit a schedule. Like, if they just want the job done or something like that.
Yeah, and we all know, like, there's some of the clients that will never say what's wrong, but they'll keep rating a 3 or a 2. Clearly, something is bothering them if they're rating us there. Like, something's off. So we want to try to, without like pushing them too hard, we want to try to figure out what it is so that we can improve and do better so they're happy. There's going to be some unrealistic expectations that we'll never be able to meet. That's completely different. That's a very tiny percentage. But for the most part, things are in our control that we can help.
I mean, I remember once Jennifer gave me 4, like during all these, I don't know how many weekly meetings we had.
Mhm.
I made her life so hard afterwards that she had to give me 5 the next meeting.
Well, like a lot of times, sometimes it has nothing to do, it's like out of the PM's control. Like, there's a design issue or a sales issue and the client's frustrated with that person,
Mhm.
or there's a design, they're frustrated with the person that caused it, or there's a design issue and they're just frustrated with that design issue, not the person.
Mhm.
And so this is an example of like some of these items then get put right over to the IDS on the level 10, and we strategize like maybe it's best to have a designer come out to that next weekly meeting because the client's actually just frustrated with, say, getting enough information to make a decision. So scrolling up to like what decisions are needed from a client. I had a lot of experience working with clients at the weekly meetings where I'm saying, hey, I need this final selection item from you. And they're like, well, I'm waiting to get information back from the designer. I haven't done that yet. And then you kind of go through this ring of, chicken, egg.
Mhm.
But then you take that back to your IES and you strategize, and maybe it's best to have the salesperson, PD, Salima, designer, whoever, come attend that next meeting and get that issue done.
Absolutely. A very, very good example of that is at Segal. There were times when the client's understanding of the scope was very different from what we had, And so they will say, well, Nina told us this was included and this was included. And I'm looking at the contract and the AWO and say, no, it's not. So what we would do so that there's no he said, she said, is I would get Nina in that meeting. We would all sit at the table together and figure out, okay, this is what the contract says. Why do you believe that this is in the scope? Or is there a conversation that happened that wasn't documented? And then we all figure it out together. So that's usually helpful.
So if it's a very important issue that needs to be resolved because it's a timely thing, then obviously then we got to go and attack it. But if it's not a timely thing, you could see where then it could hit sequences of the traditional level 10 meetings and the client meetings. So if a designer just goes and attends your next weekly meeting, then you're not having an additional client meeting that's needed. And so then that kind of just, it still fits within your sequence. It's not adding extra time, but we have time from a resource management to get the right people into place.
Absolutely.
Jack, you have
100%.
something to say?
Say again?
You have something to say?
No.
You're starting to breathe heavy. I think all this talk about clients and designers, you start getting all excited
So
about it.
you heard that breathing? I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
All right, questions so far?
I was removing my Christmas hatchet from its sleeve to show Mark.
Oh, that's hilarious.
In what manner? In a nice way or a threatening?
In an attacking way.
And well, I have my review, so I told him be kind. But it's so funny. I bought the thing for myself for Christmas, and I'm watching Vikings the last episode, and I have my hatchet on my armchair, and I'm swinging it back and forth watching the last episode. And my daughter comes up behind me and she goes, "Mom, Dad's watching Vikings with a hatchet." And I was like, I didn't even know I was doing it.
That's too funny.
You're inspired.
Hilarious.
I was. That's why I bought it. It was awesome. Custom made.
Just don't take it to a weekly meeting. There you go.
No.
Maybe
We'll keep them Zoom for everybody.
backup plan to get 5s.
Yes, so just so we know, the expectations for the PMs is to keep an average of 4.5 for the weekly meetings. That's our KPI, right? It's the expectation. So if it starts to fall below a 4, so it's a 3 or less, then at that point we'll start to strategize on how we can get better. So that's it for the rating. Now, next steps. What do you do after you've attended a weekly meeting and you've had this form completed out? Last thing I didn't mention, this has to be signed by the client and by the project manager, as you can see at the bottom. So client signature, project manager signature. I know now that we are doing some meetings virtual. So in that situation, you would just put a note that it was a virtual meeting where it says meeting location, and that we were aware that it definitely did happen. What to do with this form after it's completed in a weekly meeting. So right now, the process that we have, this could change, but currently we have you sending this form to your PDs. The PDs have been trained on how to file them. So they're filing them in the client folder, having them filed in the client folder so that we can access it whenever we need to.
On the network or Focus Road?
On the network, on the
Okay.
public drive. It's being filed in the client folder. They make a folder called weekly meetings and they all go there. You'll see them weekly dated so that they can be reviewed. The PDs are also keeping a spreadsheet where they transfer your weekly score to the spreadsheet per client so that whenever we do our debriefs, we can pull that data from there for our debriefs. That makes sense. So it's really important that these get turned in weekly.
I got this plethora of weekly meeting reports from Elizabeth Stable, which are still there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure they're uploaded in the file. Questions?
Nope.
Pretty straightforward.
The overall theme of the objective being alignment is it possible to have a job under budget and under time and an upset customer? Yes. Is it possible to have a job over budget and over time with an upset customer? Yes. In fact, that would probably be more likely to cause a customer to be upset. But I don't think that there is a direct correlation to job budgets and schedules to client satisfaction, right? A lot of times being overtime, clients get upset about it. However, if they're in the know and they're understanding, a lot of times that's what causes client satisfaction. So
Mhm.
this is main tool is to become an alignment and just make sure that we're ahead of everything. And that's why we really try to dive into, are you being satisfied right now? And then turn and get to your IDS to say, what do we need? Where do you need resources to help that client be happy?
Absolutely right, Andrew. And this section in particular, where it says items to address, will be one of the areas where I'll be looking to help you or offer my assistance. Because the idea is to have items drop off every week because they're being attended to, they're addressed, they're falling off. Now, some longer items might stay on for a couple of weeks, but if there's an item that's there that's just not moving, and it's been there from week to week to week, then we want to talk about it. Like, how can we help? What's the roadblock? How can we help to get that item completed and adjusted and off that sheet?
Kind of similar to the hot item, we discussed for the
Yeah, if there's a hot item that's just there not
level,
coming, it'll
level,
go in
level
our
10
level
meeting.
10.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you said send this sheet in. How would they do that?
You can take a picture of the sheet and send it to your PD. You can drop it in your PD's tray in the office, and when they come in the office, they file it all. So you can send it either electronically or put a physical copy of the sheet on their tray. Either way works. Since we're virtual now, it all works.
Either way, it's gonna get virtual, right? Like,
Yes.
so even if we turn in something physical, it's gonna turn in virtual.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, awesome. That's all I have for
Good.
this meeting. Anything to add from you all?
No, looks pretty straightforward.
Okay, I'm going to save this revised sheet on the public drive, and I'll send you all an email letting you know where it's saved, so you know where to look for it when you need it.
Can you just send it out in the email where you saved it?
Yes,
You
I'll
just-
have it attached in the email as well. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
All right, rate this meeting.
I was giving us a 5. We just changed the rating scale.
Why don't we do that? Scale of 1 to 5.
Very satisfied.
I'm very satisfied.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
what it says on the sheet, very satisfied 5.
I'm very satisfied because it's booked for an hour and it's 25 minutes in.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very satisfied.
Jack?
I'm satisfied that it's ending early. Yes. Thank you.
All right, great. So 5 for me too. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.